Andor goes to painstaking lengths to emphasize the horrors that come for everybody under Imperial rule. More so than any other Star Wars property, we see the everyday effects of Imperial oversight. Between oppressive visa checks, sexual harassment, and full-scale genocide, the constant terror of oppression is felt in full force. When Cassian attempts to simply keep his head down, he's arrested for nothing more than being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Imperial oppression as inescapable as the prison he ends up in. But when I say that these horrors come for everybody, I mean everybody. Let me ask you, which characters from Andor have the most brutal endings? Several rebels die, but they do so safe in the belief that it was for a good cause. Luthen may die, but he does so seemingly proud of what he's achieved. We know that Cassian dies in Rogue One, but he does so knowing the gargantuan contribution he's made to the rebellion through the Death Star plans, and there's a tone of victory despite the tragedy. But the Imperials? Partagaz commits suicide after listening to the Rebel Manifesto and realizing the Empire is doomed. Dedra ends the series locked up in the same dystopian prison which she herself has sent countless others to, with no hint of reward or recognition for hard work or moral depravity. And Syril, we'll get to Syril. Fascism comes for everyone, and in Andor this applies almost doubly to its perpetrators. Star Wars' empire has historically been made up of manipulative, cold, calculating geniuses like Grand Moff Tarkin, high-ranking Imperials with cool demeanours and intellectual-sounding British accents. Maybe not my British accent, they're like the posh ones. But for an oppressive system to squeeze an entire galaxy to breaking point, it needs millions of unthinking foot soldiers who buy into the system's ideology or else don't care and just want a payday. Syril Karn is an archetypal example of how a regular person, who in another life could have been a good man, is driven to support an evil regime. From Cyril's introduction, two things are immediately clear about him. Number one, he craves approval. He stands up straight, chest puffed out, delivering a detailed report of a murder case on Molana 1, an area in which he works as corporate security, a sort of B-rate police force. This juxtaposes the uncaring demeanour of Chief Hine, the lethargic superior officer who leans back in his chair and simply wants this murder case swept under the rug. We will later get to see the source of this craving, a consequence of his mother constantly belittling and emasculating him. Syril feels a constant need to prove himself as a capable, strong man, and will stop at very little to do so. The other key drive behind Syril, however, and one that I think is often ignored when talking about him, is a seemingly genuine desire for justice. As viewers, we understand that the murder he investigates was largely the fault of the dead corpos who harassed our main character, Cassian Andor. But from Cyril's perspective, two colleagues, men he's likely met, have been murdered in cold blood and left behind two mourning families. They were more than bad guys, they're men just like him, and he wants to bring their killer to what he believes would be justice. From this point on, his obsession with catching this man will never truly cease, but neither will a seemingly genuine belief in justice. His main issue is that he buys into Imperial propaganda. He was raised on Coruscant, the heart of the Empire, and his uncle Harlow seemingly has some influence within it. Syril has been primed to believe that it is an agent of justice across the galaxy, and so he uses the Empire's means to pursue his ends. Once again, Chief Hine acts as a foil. Here is a man who doesn't care to find the killer, despite it being his job. Although he correctly points out that the corpos were likely harassing the killer, his desire to see the case gone is clearly born more from a desire to make himself look good rather than any sense of justice. He wants the murder away from any reports which may bring into question his management of the sector's security. Although this security isn't strictly Imperial, it is under Imperial authority, and its corruption is staring Syril right in the face. The officers killed were corrupt, leering in a brothel they weren't allowed in, with money they shouldn't have had, and shaking down a man who did nothing wrong. The chief is equally corrupt, wishing to cover up the case and protect his own career. The Empire does not care about these men. They're nobody. Nameless, faceless foot soldiers used to benefit more powerful people, and so why would the Empire care to investigate when they die? And this is where Cyril's third primary character trait rears its pathetic head. He is weak. He's a man who cares about justice and believes that the Imperial machine he's been raised within will provide it. He's also a character who desperately wants to believe that he's strong due to constant mockery from his own mother his whole life. But when confronted with the truth that the Empire does not provide true justice, he's too weak to face it, to accept that he's on the wrong side and to do something about it. For now, this is easy. After all, this is a low-level case on a planet only loosely under Imperial jurisdiction, and surely the real Empire will be more just. Through his unlikely and frankly bizarre romance with high-ranking ISB officer Dedra Miro, Syril gets to find out for himself. This romance buys him a front-row seat to the gradual propaganda war waged against Gorman, where he is working as a double agent within the Gorman Rebellion. During his time there, he seems to grow a slight fondness for the place and watches with a level of suspicion as the Imperial propaganda machine paints the people he mingles with every day as pretentious, stuck-up troublemakers. He even develops what seems to be a fairly close relationship with some of the Gorman rebels. In one particular scene, he insists to his overbearing mother that the Gormans aren't who the Empire makes them out to be, telling her,
Propaganda. Mother, you're being sold these ideas.
here at least some development is present. Syril no longer sees the Empire as a perfect entity that can do no wrong, but as one willing to dishonestly represent the people of Gorman for political purposes beyond his understanding. Although he is saying this as part of a plot to infiltrate the Gorman rebels, I believe the words ring too true to be entirely without conviction, especially since they're initially presented to the audience as genuine belief. It seems that to at least some extent his belief in justice still remains, and he recognises the injustice being done to the Gorman people. In response, Cyril's mother speaks with the Empire's voice.
Don't become too much of an individual, Cyril.
Although he shuts her down, his choice to remain as a cog in the Imperial war on Gorman and remain willfully blind to the steps he walks down the path to genocide suggests that deep down he is still taking this advice. Once again, he's too weak to confront a truth that would challenge the life he's always dreamed of, an important role in Imperial operations and a romantic partner who accepts it. He chooses not to be an autonomous individual who questions what he sees, but a good citizen who accepts the devil at his doorstep as long as he wears a uniform. All of this comes to a head in episode 8, Who Are You?, when the Empire's evil becomes too great and too close to deny. Much of the episode's first half traces Cyril's gradual realization of the terrors about to be unleashed. Mining equipment which could lead to Gorman's destruction is being lowered onto the planet, and Cyril's attempts to deny this are met with disgusted ridicule. The Gormans gather for protests in the increasingly militarized town square, and Cyril looks on with trepidation as news reporters describe the peaceful protest as an insurrection. When he arrives in the Imperial headquarters, he's escorted to a room filled with monstrously large Imperial security droids, all staring at him accusingly as if to tell him, "You did this." Finally, as he sees the barrel of the Imperial sniper aimed at innocent Gormans, as he recognizes at last the powder keg the Empire has manufactured, he realizes that they intend to pull the trigger and confronts Dedra. Perhaps he recognizes his weakness momentarily, or is made to feel weak by his lack of knowledge about Dedra's true plans, but either way his response is to try to assert power in the way fascism has taught him, through physical violence. He storms into her office, ignoring the officer telling him to wait. When she tells him she's just following orders, he grabs her by the throat and threatens her life if she doesn't tell him the truth of their plans on Gorman. Warning after warning as to the Empire's true evil has been standing plain to see, but his weakness and unwillingness to see them mean only now has he reached breaking point, and he turns to violence in a desperate, flailing attempt to assert power. Some have read this as a victorious, powerful moment for Cyril, but for me it's one of his lowest moments. He's too weak to accept that he has become evil himself, and so he externalizes his own failings onto Dedra. The show conjures imagery of domestic violence in this moment to make the audience uncomfortable with his response regardless of Dedra's own callousness. Cyril weaves and wanders through the crowd like a prophet of the coming destruction, unable to speak, powerless to stop the tragedy that he knows is coming, haunted by the Gorman's chillingly beautiful protest song. The trigger is pulled, the powder keg blows, and the singing turns to screams. Amongst the slaughter, Cyril wanders in a daze. He stares at the world around him, crashing and burning, all while his own worldview burns down in his head. In one shot, the world turns to slow motion around him as he gazes round, the sound of screams, explosions, and blaster fire numbed and paired with a ringing violin. But in this moment of realization, this moment that many viewers would expect to lead to some form of redemption, he sees Cassian, the man who, years ago, murdered his colleagues, the man who sent him on the path he is now on, and once again his weakness takes hold. Rather than continue to question his worldview, consider that maybe this rebel was right all along, he takes the easy way out. Paradoxically, this moment seems on the surface like one of Cyril's strongest. He charges down the man he hates the most, a capable soldier, and pins him to the ground, strangling and very nearly killing him. But this is the artificial strength that fascism encourages. Just like the attack on Dedra, it is a mask of strength covering his pathetic inability to confront the truth of his own role in this slaughter. The fight itself is fittingly pathetic. Both men roll around and seize each other's faces desperately, a far cry from the gloriously choreographed fight scenes we've come to expect from Star Wars. He wins the fight, lets his simple, single-minded fury drive him to supposed victory. He aims a blaster down at Cassian. Messy hair, blood-stained face, he prepares to kill the murderer, the terrorist whom he blames for all the ills of his life when it becomes too hard to blame himself, the man he was too weak to ever become. And he's met with one simple, monosyllabic phrase.
Who are you?
He stares at Cassian as these words sink in. Who is Syril Karn? What does he believe in? The Empire? How can he when it's committed such an atrocity? Justice? How can he when he laid the groundwork for that very atrocity? Syril Karn is no one. The Empire has stripped him of his identity, taken advantage of his low self-esteem by granting him a role of supposed importance, knowing he will be too weak to refuse. And finally, as he stares down the barrel of the gun at Cassian, he seems to realise this. The man he has hated for years is on the floor beneath him. The rebel who has caused his beloved empire so much trouble is ready to be shot. But with all of this whirling around in his head, he seems to realise the foolishness of what he's done. He realises he's in the wrong. He realises that maybe, just maybe, he can be better, be stronger. He lowers the gun. Syril is shot dead by a Gorman, punished for his actions and killed in service of an empire that robbed him of the man he could have been. He dies a shell of the strong man he so desperately wanted to become. Syril demonstrates incredibly well the ways in which fascism is terrible not just for its obvious victims, but its perpetrators too. Syril Karn is so fascinating because, despite some surface-level quirks, he is a compellingly ordinary man who is made complicit in extraordinary atrocities. And it is ordinary men that fascism preys and relies on to perpetuate itself. For the empire to function, it needs millions of Syril Karns ready to follow orders and willing to die doing so. He is a brilliantly tragic example of how a seemingly good but weak person is taken advantage of and unwittingly turned into an anonymous foot soldier of fascism, only recognizing the monster in the mirror when it's too